If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances, quiet strength, and the kind of leadership that puts people first, then this is the channel for you. We share powerful true-to-life stories about resilience, justice, and redemption, especially for those who've been overlooked or underestimated. Every week, we release new narratives that inspire, uplift, and remind us that it's never too late to take back control of your story. Whether it's a comeback in the boardroom, a quiet victory after betrayal, or a legacy reclaimed, there's something here that will speak to you. So don't just watch, be part of a community that values wisdom, integrity, and the courage to stand tall. Click subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of inspiration. Your story matters, and here it's honored. I was midway through analyzing our latest distribution forecast when Rebecca Carlin barged into my office. No knock, no greeting, just a sharp, aggressive entrance designed to unsettle. Classic Rebecca. "Monica," she snapped, flinging a thick file onto my desk. "We need to talk. Now." I looked from the folder to the woman I'd reported to for 5 exhausting years. Rebecca Carlin, the type who mistook intimidation for leadership. She rarely acknowledged the women on her team unless she needed someone to cover a mistake or organize a last-minute meeting. Still, I kept my posture relaxed. I always did. "Of course," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite mine. She didn't sit. Instead, she stood tall and looming, like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. "The executive committee has decided to make structural changes," she began, arms crossed. "We're heading in a new direction. And frankly, we need individuals who can lead, not just crunch numbers." My mind caught the subtext, but I blinked once and kept my voice level. "You're letting me go?" Her lips curled into something between a smirk and satisfaction. "Let's not use that word. Think of it as transitioning you out. Effective immediately. No warning, no review, no acknowledgement that my division had just posted the company's best profit margins in nearly a decade." "I see," I replied, calm but firm. "Could you explain the reasoning?" Her tone sharpened. "You're technically sound, but you don't inspire. You follow protocol, but don't command a room. And let's be honest, this industry doesn't reward quiet execution. It rewards presence." There it was. Not even subtly coded. A rejection wrapped in buzzwords, meant to mask what was really being said. I didn't fit the image she wanted to project. I wasn't loud enough, flashy enough, male enough. "I understand," I said, my voice measured. Rebecca looked briefly taken aback. She'd expected pushback, maybe even tears. But I'd mastered the art of stillness in rooms where bravado was mistaken for competence. "You'll need to return your badge and company laptop by end of day," she said. "IT will cut off access at 5 p.m. HR has your severance paperwork." I stood and extended my hand. "Thank you for being direct." She blinked, hesitated, and shook it. "Best of luck out there." As she strode out, certain she'd delivered a clean blow, I remained standing, silent. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt an odd sense of relief. Because what Rebecca didn't know, what no one in that office knew, was that I wasn't just the logistics lead. 3 weeks earlier, I had finalized something big. Something that would make today's events almost comical in hindsight. I glanced at the photo by my monitor, my mother beaming in front of the first Bayside Global Freight warehouse, the day it opened. The same company Rebecca had just transitioned me out of. I ran my fingers over the silver frame. "You told me to be patient, Mom. To wait for the right moment." I began packing. I didn't take much, just a photo, a holiday mug from my team, and a leather notebook filled with strategy proposals that had been ignored for years. Beyond my door, the office carried on in an awkward hush. A few colleagues offered sympathetic looks. Others looked away, uncertain. No one asked, but their faces were filled with questions. Did Monica get fired? Why? What happened? I walked through the front lobby without a word. And I smiled, because they had no idea what was coming next. With a quiet, composed breath and nothing more than a nod to the receptionist, I stepped into the brisk Denver air. The sun hit my face, and with it came the sudden, liberating sense that I was finally done carrying the weight of those 15 long years. They thought dismissing me would mark the end. What they didn't realize was they had just pulled the final pin. I unlocked my phone and typed a short message to Ms. Keller, my attorney. "It's time. Move forward with everything." Her reply arrived within moments. "Understood. Special session can be arranged within 5 business days." I turned for one last look at the gleaming steel and glass facade of Alton Ridge Logistics, the company I'd once called home. Rebecca Carlin thought she'd ended the chapter. But the next time I walked into that executive boardroom, it wouldn't be with a department badge. It would be with control and a genuine smile, not a strategic one. 2 weeks earlier, I'd sat in a paneled study lined with law books and old photographs across from Mr. Braddock, our family's longtime legal advisor. On the table between us was a sealed cream envelope, thick and crisp, stamped with a wax insignia I knew well. "Caroline," he said with gentle gravity, "your father was clear. This envelope is not to be opened a day before your 35th birthday." I gave a soft, half-amused smile. "What is it, some kind of posthumous scavenger hunt?" He chuckled, but didn't answer. "Instead," he said, "your father was meticulous. And he believed in planning far beyond his own time. He trusted you. Completely." That line stayed with me. My father, James Atwell, the founder of Alton Ridge, wasn't just a strategist. He was a man of purpose and legacy. He passed away 6 years ago, and since then, everything he'd cultivated began to unravel. When Rebecca came on board, full of bold claims and corporate buzzwords, the company's spirit faded. The loyalty, the mentorship, the ethical grounding, it all slowly vanished under her tenure. I stayed, hoping to preserve the foundation he laid. But now I understood. My father had anticipated this shift. He had prepared me for a moment like this. On the morning of my 35th birthday, I sat in his old armchair by the bay window of our family home, where he used to drink his morning coffee and read the Wall Street Journal. Warm light filled the room as I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. "Caroline, if you're reading this, you've reached 35. And you're ready. I've never doubted you, not for a moment. I've watched your strength, your grace under pressure, your refusal to compromise your values for easy wins. And I've also watched what's happened to the company since I left. That's why I didn't just leave you a legacy, I left you authority." I paused, heart pounding gently as I reached for the enclosed document. It was a notarized trust agreement, finalized and quietly held for years. My father had retained 90% of the company's voting shares when he retired, and through that document, he had transferred every one of them to me. Effective immediately. 90%. The board wouldn't see it coming. Rebecca certainly wouldn't. The woman they dismissed with a patronizing speech about presence and charisma now had the power to override every executive decision. And I intended to use it. I read the letter again. Then once more. I needed to be absolutely certain I hadn't misread it, that it wasn't some elaborate birthday prank or misunderstanding. But no, this was real. I wasn't just a stakeholder. I now held majority control. Nina Atwell, age 35, was the legal and controlling owner of Alton Ridge Logistics. A rush of emotions flooded my chest, disbelief, awe, and something else I hadn't felt in years, unshakable confidence. A quiet, rooted certainty that didn't need to shout to be heard. I called Mr. Braddock immediately. "Is this legitimate?" I asked, barely trusting my own voice. "Yes," he confirmed without hesitation. "Your father structured the trust very intentionally, kept it out of public records, legally sealed. No one knows unless you choose to disclose it." "But why now? Why not earlier?" "He believed you needed to see the company for yourself. Understand who the people really are. And choose freely whether you wanted to lead or walk away." That stopped me. Because for years, I'd endured the slow erosion of my credibility. Watched my work get absorbed into PowerPoint decks presented by others. I'd been spoken over in strategy sessions, labeled as dependable rather than innovative, and congratulated for supporting roles I actually led. I used to think that earning respect was just a matter of time. But now I understood. It was never about time. It was about power. And now I had it. I scheduled a follow-up with Mr. Braddock for the next morning. Let's begin preparing the shareholder meeting, I told him. We'll get everything in motion, he assured me. The board can be notified once the documents are finalized. Don't alert them yet, I replied. There was a moment of hesitation. Nina, can I ask what your plan is? I glanced out the window of my Lakeshore Drive apartment. Streams of traffic moved obliviously beneath the gold-streaked sky. They had no idea what was coming. I'm going to walk into that boardroom, I said evenly, and remind them exactly who they tried to dismiss. I never showed for the formal exit process. HR called. Twice. Then emailed. I ignored it all. Instead, I met Mr. Braddock at a quiet cafe near Wabash Avenue, a place with no corporate ties. Over warm espresso and the clink of coffee cups, he slid a slim folder across the table. Final draft. All ready. I opened it. One signature would trigger a seismic shift. The notice of a special shareholder meeting, called by the majority holder, with a single agenda, review and reconstitution of executive leadership. Are you sure? Braddock asked, adjusting his cufflink with a careful glance. This doesn't just shake the tree. It cuts the trunk. I met his eyes. They started this the day they underestimated me. He gave a low nod. Then it's time. The papers were direct. Simple, really. Like most things built to be unbreakable. Martin wouldn't see it coming. That was the entire point. His power was performative, built on volume, bravado, and buzzwords. The board, mostly men with pensions and golf memberships, had mistaken his force for competence. Now they'd learn what actual leadership looked like. We'll serve notice Friday at 9 a.m., Braddock said. The meeting will be held Tuesday morning. That gives the board, let's say, 2 days to sweat. I smiled, this time without restraint. Perfect. Later that day, I met with Caroline Winters, the longtime trustee who had discreetly overseen the trust's compliance. She greeted me with that same sharp glint in her eyes I remembered from my father's memorial. I've watched that man unravel your father's legacy thread by thread, she said firmly, pushing a folder toward me. Let's stitch something stronger. You don't owe him civility, Caroline said as she handed over the folder. Inside was everything required for Tuesday, proof of ownership, full voting rights documentation, and a performance breakdown under Martin Graves' leadership. Declining morale, record-breaking staff turnover, excessive spending on executive luxuries, and stagnating revenue, all during a period when the industry was thriving. He's been concealing the decline under artificially optimistic forecasts, Caroline stated, her voice even. If he stays, he'll bankrupt Alton Ridge within 24 months. I nodded slowly, taking in each page. I won't need to say much. The data will speak louder than I ever could. As I exited her office, I passed the large canvas hanging just beyond reception, a portrait of my father, standing proudly in front of the original shipping yard. He looked younger than I remembered, one hand resting on the shoulder of a child in a red wool coat. He believed in people. He believed in passing on more than wealth. He believed in passing on values. And though he was gone, it felt like his steady hand still rested on my shoulder. By the start of the week, whispers had turned into speculation. Former teammates sent messages. Did you resign? Martin's acting like everything's normal, but HR's gone silent. Whatever you did, I hope you're okay. It's not the same without you. I said nothing. The silence was strategic. Let Martin believe he'd erased me. Let him enjoy the illusion a little longer. That was part of the setup. Monday evening, I stood before my full-length mirror, wearing the navy blue blazer I had never quite found the right moment for. Sleek. Intentional. Not the kind of outfit for asking permission, the kind you wear when you walk in and take your place. I didn't prepare a speech. Just a handful of sentences. Direct. Grounded. Enough to cut through the noise. The facts would handle the rest. Tuesday dawned clear and brisk. Chicago hummed as usual. Train horns, sidewalk chatter, the distant clatter of morning traffic. But inside a certain boardroom, things were about to shift forever. I arrived early. The receptionist glanced up, startled, but didn't stop me. I moved through the lobby without a word. Upstairs, light spilled from the boardroom's frosted windows. I could hear Martin's voice, still pitching, still selling, completely unaware. Mr. Braddock met me outside the doors. They're already mid-presentation. He thinks this is just another operations report. Not for much longer, I replied. I smoothed my jacket and walked toward the conference room. The handle clicked softly as I entered. Conversation ceased. Faces turned. Martin, standing near the head of the table, paused mid-sentence when he saw me. "Nina," he said, blinking. "This meeting is reserved for board members." I gave a polite smile and placed a leather folder on the polished table. "Exactly." Then I walked to the seat at the head and sat down. The silence was so thick, it felt like sound itself had stopped. Martin stared at me from across the room. First with confusion, then recognition, then panic. "Nina," he tried again, firmer now. "As I said, this is a board meeting. You are no longer an employee." "I'm not here as an employee," I said, voice calm, unwavering. "I'm here as the majority shareholder." That sentence was a match. The boardroom, for just a moment, was completely still right before the fire started. The air in the room shifted. The board members exchanged glances, some stiffened in discomfort, while others leaned forward, their curiosity now sharpened. One of the senior members, Mr. Langford, who had served on the board since my father's tenure, adjusted his reading glasses and looked down at the legal paperwork in front of him. Then he looked up at me. "Miss Atwell," he asked, his tone measured, "is this information correct?" "It is," I confirmed. 90% ownership was transferred to me through a private trust. All documents are verified, notarized, and compliant with our corporate charter. Martin's eyes darted between me and Mr. Braddock, who was calmly distributing additional copies of the ownership certificate to the board secretary. "This is ridiculous," Martin said, half laughing. "You expect us to believe your father handed over the entire company to you in secret?" I turned to him. He did it because he trusted my judgment, and because he knew exactly what might happen in his absence. That landed like a weight across the table. I didn't need to elaborate. Everyone in that room had witnessed the shift, the erosion of principles, the quiet exodus of talent, the focus on image over substance. Martin had built a kingdom of favoritism and inflated metrics, and it was collapsing from within. I opened a second folder. As controlling shareholder, I've exercised my authority to call this special session, I said evenly. The purpose, to evaluate executive leadership, including the role of chief executive. Martin stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood. "This is revenge," he barked. "You can't just walk in here and throw me out." I looked him in the eye. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm executing my right." With that, I slid a performance summary across the polished surface of the table. No theatrics, just facts. Employee engagement had plummeted 38% in under 2 years. Attrition in vital divisions had surged nearly 50%. There were 3 ongoing formal complaints related to discrimination. Financial growth had stagnated despite a thriving logistics sector. I detailed expense reports, unauthorized flights, luxury retreats, bloated bonuses. Everything had a paper trail. Everything had been signed under Martin's authority. Heads lowered. Pages turned. Mr. Langford's jaw tightened. The CFO leaned toward our legal counsel, who began reviewing policy documents on his tablet at double speed. "You're manipulating data," Martin snapped, voice shaking. "This is a power grab. You're twisting this to suit your narrative." I didn't flinch. No manipulation required. The truth speaks for itself. He had relied for years on one thing, that no one with influence would dare challenge him. That assumption had just expired. I pulled out the final sheet. Effective immediately, I said clearly, "I am entering a motion to dismiss Martin Graves from the position of Chief Executive Officer." Gasps broke the silence. "As primary shareholder," I continued, "my vote alone meets the threshold required to enact the change." The board secretary looked stunned, hands hovering over his laptop. You don't need a supporting vote?" "I hold 90%, I replied simply. "That qualifies as decisive control." Mr. Langford cleared his throat. "Per our internal governance rules, the motion carries. Martin Graves is removed, pending final documentation." Martin's face turned crimson as he slammed his palm against the table. "You can't do this." I looked at him one last time. I already did. No one needed to escort him out. Martin Graves didn't protest or plead. But as he left the boardroom, his steps clipped, his jaw tight, something in his expression shifted. That air of command he had worn like armor? Gone. In its place was something smaller: disbelief, resentment, and fear. As the door clicked shut behind him, I allowed myself one deep breath. Then I turned to face the board. "This company deserves better," I said clearly. "And so do the people who've held it together." Mr. Langford gave a slow nod. "It's good to have you back, Nina." By Friday, the brass nameplate outside the CEO's office had been quietly removed. I didn't claim the corner suite right away. Symbols could wait. There was work to do, real work. The kind that couldn't be done from behind a closed door or a larger desk. That following Monday, I scheduled an all-staff meeting in the main hall, a space once used by Martin to dazzle with inflated projections and self-congratulatory accolades. This time, though, the atmosphere carried a cautious energy. Employees trickled in, exchanging wary looks. The front seats remained empty. Skepticism still lingered. I stood alone at the front. No presentation slides. No podium. Just me. "Some of you know my name," I began. "Some of you only know the version of me someone else painted. So let me be clear. I'm not here to impose control. I'm here to restore trust." The room grew quiet. "For years, this company thrived because of your efforts, your dedication, your creativity, your belief that what we built mattered. And somewhere along the way, that belief got lost." I paused. "Last week, I was let go. I was told I lacked the strength to lead, that I didn't fit the mold." A few employees shifted in their chairs. Some looked surprised, others amused. A few cracked cautious smiles. I didn't argue, because I knew something that leadership had forgotten. True authority isn't about loud voices or flashy titles. It's about clarity, purpose, and putting the right people in the right roles. I made eye contact with the people who mattered most. Quiet contributors. Problem solvers. Overlooked talent. Starting today, we rebuild. And that's exactly what I did. Over the next 14 days, I met with everyone from department heads to entry-level staff, janitors to junior developers. I asked direct questions. What was broken? What had they tried to fix? Who was doing exceptional work without recognition? And then I followed through. I promoted Maya Sanchez from the customer support desk to director of client relations, a position she had quietly performed for nearly a year while her manager took credit. I brought back Kevin Lee, a brilliant product strategist who had resigned in frustration after being passed over in favor of smoother talkers with weaker portfolios. I completely reorganized HR. Every ignored complaint, every voice that had gone unheard, I read them all. Within days, several middle managers were terminated for fostering toxic cultures built on fear and favoritism. Then I resurrected something from my father's earliest business journals, the People First Initiative. A commitment to building from the inside out. Transparent pay bands. Anonymous reporting channels. Leadership mentorships that actually developed talent. This wasn't just about fixing what had broken. It was about restoring what had once made Alton Ridge worth building in the first place. We launched a new initiative, an internal program built to spotlight original thinking, celebrate true teamwork, and ensure fair advancement. Job titles no longer defined influence. Quiet contributors were elevated. The era of whispered promotions and invisible ceilings was over. Late one night, I wandered the office alone. The atmosphere had changed. It felt warmer now, brighter. Laughter drifted from the break room, not nervous, not forced. People stayed past office hours because they were engaged, not afraid. Desks told stories again. Family snapshots, small plants, handwritten notes, personal touches that had slowly vanished under Martin's rigid regime had returned. As I passed the engineering suite, I paused beside a whiteboard tucked along the hallway wall. Scribbled across it in cobalt marker were 3 words, underlined twice. She came back. Not she took control. Not she replaced Martin. She came back. I read it twice. Then again. That distinction mattered more than anything engraved on my door. It wasn't about domination. It was about return. Restoration. The following Monday, I finally stepped into the office at the top of the building. Not because I needed to, but because it was time. The updated nameplate read simply, Nina Atwell, Chief Executive Officer. Sleek, minimal, clear. I didn't bring much, just one framed photograph. My father and I, arms around each other, standing in front of the original warehouse on opening day. Both of us smiling like the future was something we could shape with our own hands. I placed it at the edge of the walnut desk. The same desk that had been here for years. I hadn't swapped out the furniture or repainted the walls. I wasn't here for aesthetics. I was here for continuity. This wasn't just my company. It was my inheritance of trust, of responsibility, of a legacy I was determined to protect and evolve. Exactly 1 year had passed. 12 months since I'd walked out of this building, politely dismissed, boxed up like an afterthought. 12 months since Martin Graves had declared I lacked what the company needed, never realizing I already held its future in my hands. Now, as I stepped through those same lobby doors, tailored blazer, sleek portfolio tucked beneath my arm, I felt none of the resentment people might expect. No bitterness. No smugness. Just clarity. Just purpose. At the front desk, the receptionist stood as I approached. "Good morning, Ms. Atwell." I smiled. "Please, Nina is just fine. We're all in this together." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. I rode alone to the top floor, once Martin's realm. Now mine. I hadn't renovated the space for optics. The windows still looked out over Lake Michigan. The desk hadn't moved, but the walls were different now. Gone were the abstract stock photos. In their place, snapshots of real moments. Our teams on retreat. Launch events. Product rollouts led by people whose names had once been buried in the footnotes. And behind me on the far wall hung a single portrait. My father. Not to glorify him, but to remind me who we were before the noise. I sat down, opened my laptop, and reviewed the quarter's performance. It was the company's best in 5 years. Client satisfaction up 23%. Team retention up 41%. Revenue at an all-time high. But what truly mattered was how we got there. Transparently. Inclusively. With integrity. There were no more hushed grievances. Feedback was invited and acted on. Leadership was no longer a closed circle. Diversity had doubled. And more importantly, opportunity had, too. A soft knock interrupted my focus. "Come in," I said. Maya Sanchez, now thriving as head of client experience, stepped inside. Her eyes bright behind her glasses. "You ready?" she asked. I smiled. "Let's go." They're assembled in the main conference suite, Maya said gently. I stood, brushing down the lapels of my jacket. Let's go. The boardroom hadn't changed in design, but the people seated around the table marked a clear transformation. For the first time in the company's history, half the seats were held by women. Many were in their 30s, sharp thinkers, solution-driven, unafraid to challenge norms. They pushed for clarity, demanded progress, and built smarter strategies. At the head sat Jason Reed, our newest strategy advisor, innovative, empathetic, and exactly the kind of leadership my father would have championed. Before we begin, Jason said, turning toward me, Nina has something to share. I hadn't prepared remarks, but as every face turned to me not with skepticism, but with trust, I knew this was the moment everything had led to. I want to start with gratitude, I said. Thank you for standing behind the hard choices, for choosing long-term good over short-term gain, and for helping build something grounded in purpose. I took a breath. Someone once said I didn't have what it takes to lead. But leadership isn't volume or title, it's direction. It's ownership. It's making the right call, even when it costs you. I smiled, not to impress, but because it felt honest. My father founded this company with integrity at its core. And for the first time in years, I believe we're honoring that vision again. The room held a quiet stillness, followed by sincere applause. It wasn't loud, but it was lasting. Later that day, I took the scenic route back to my office, weaving through every floor. It reminded me of my early days, blending into the background, learning the rhythms of the place. I checked in with product teams, joked with designers, and celebrated with interns who had just launched their first campaign. In the lounge, someone had baked cupcakes for a summer intern's farewell. I grabbed one, found an empty chair, and sat beside them, trading stories and small talk. Because this wasn't just a company anymore. It was a community. And that more than any board title or market win was the real victory.